Oh, hi, can anybody hear me?
I hear you, Laura.
I can.
I
Yes,
can't hear you, Ashley, though.
You can't hear me?
I see your lips moving, but I don't, try again.
Can you hear me now?
I can, I might have been muted. I might have turned my speaker off, so that's good. So we're all just joining here. So thank you, Ashley, for hosting us. I self-host a lot of times and Ashley's handling that. So let me just, and Andrew Campanelli, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And do we just call you Andrew, or do you like to be called anything more formal than that?
Andrew is fine.
Yeah, yay. Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining us. And let me, and this is actually a zoning revision committee meeting, and we're a little short of zoning revision committee members. Because we have Weston, I'm the only ZRC member on here at the moment.
Okay.
But that's okay. We can still have a good meeting. I think people are used to us kind of joining a little bit late. I see Janine is on. And I don't know where everybody else is.
We can give them a few more minutes. Maybe they're busy. That's okay.
Well, yeah, everybody's always busy, but I'm just going to check my phone and see if I got a text from anybody. What have we got here? Oh, I know one person said they won't attend. I was just on the phone. Oh, yay. Look at that. We have Judy, or Jude is a better, more precise. So we're waiting for a few people. Oh, Jeff Collins is joining. Yeah. We should have a quorum then.
Okay.
So we'll just hang on for just another moment. Jude, Jeff. Yay. So we almost have a quorum, but not quite. 4 is a quorum for our zoning revision committee. And I know Ed Sanders is going to join for a bit. So Andrew, where we are with the document, and I've invited Steve Romine, Andrew, who you know, because he's, as you know, he's been totally actively involved.
Yes.
And gave everybody the same call-in information. So it's odd. And Ashley's helping. Usually I self-host these, but Ashley is a supervisor secretary, and for important meetings, which this is, even though it's after hours, she's hosting for us. So I think she's got the room set up, so she's got to let people in as she sees them. So hopefully there's nobody in the waiting room. But Andrew, so where we are is, I know you had a busy day. Carol talked to me today, said you had a busy day. Mid-afternoon or so, or it might have been late afternoon, I sent you an email with some of the comments. We met 2 weeks ago. The zoning revision committee meeting, zoning revision committee met 2 weeks ago, and discussed some topics that were on people's minds. And it was, there are some people who are on the zoning revision committee and some people who are not on the committee but were interested and came to the meeting. So it's a compilation of what people who are interested in telecommunications had to say. So I did send you that, and I didn't know whether you wanted to start off by talking about things. Oh, let me ask Weston real quick. I see Weston's on mute. I don't know if you can unmute Weston for a minute.
yeah, I'm on.
Yeah, do you know where, I thought Steve would be here.
Yeah, I thought so too. I have no idea. I can call him to find out what he's up to. Also, Rex should be here too. I don't get it.
Yeah, and Raj's not here. Well, you're supporting the crew there, so we'll just.
Yeah, but Steve is more experienced, shall we say, and he's got more comments, and you've already put him on the board. So
Yeah,
let me call and see what's going on. All right, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, and we have Ed now, so we actually have a quorum of our zoning revision committee. So I will officially call the meeting to order. My clock only says 6:33, so we're actually doing pretty well here. I give us credit for 6:30 start meeting. So again, so I did send you, Andrew, an email again mid-afternoon. That was the last meeting we had, with compilation of what was on people's minds, and saying don't go change the document based on it, because we want to discuss it together with you, see if you think these things are a good idea, and then see what direction we have. The other thing that's happened is Ed, who has been extremely involved in, oh, there's David, excellent. So Ed, who has been extremely involved in the zoning law in Woodstock in general, and involved in telecommunications, but before Andrew, before we engaged you, Ed had written a version of it, and then you shared the version you had done for a different town. And Ed was in agreement along with some others that we should go with what you had. But Ed is super at zoning law and knows a ton about it. So, so what Ed did is he reviewed your document, which I think is about 47 pages.
Yep.
I reviewed it. Some team members skimmed through it and looked at different parts, but Ed read the whole thing. I read up to page 40. I still have 7 pages to go, but Ed has marked up the document with his comments. He sent me his markup. I added my markups to it. So we have 2 things that we can review today. One is the list of what people thought that they shared before in the last meeting that I sent. Everybody has it in the minutes. You have it in a separate email. Plus, if we wanted to make it a work session and look at, as in my comments in the document, we could do that. Not looking at every itty bitty thing, but you know, there's some bigger things in there. We can do that. But I didn't know whether, Andrew, whether it was your hope to start out telling us stuff. I mean, this is in a way your meeting. At one point you said you could come and tell us stuff. I don't know whether you want to start out by telling us stuff or if you want to start out by looking at our questions for you. I don't know what you think is the best use of our time.
Okay. Well, first, I did not get to see your last email, as Carol may have mentioned. Unfortunately, I had to call an ambulance, her mother, to take her to the hospital. Today she got released. We got her into a rehab facility this afternoon. So I was out of the office. I didn't see your email.
No problem at all. I knew you had personal stuff going on.
Thank you. So I will give you as much time as you like tonight. I'll answer every question you have. I am open to discussion. I will tell you that generally when I send one of these to a local government, the first meeting is usually about an hour. There's a lot of questions and they're good questions. I want to make sure the town understands exactly what I'm doing. Also understand this is a draft, so you can make whatever changes you think are appropriate. And I fully expect members of the planning board might want things put in there. The town attorney might want things in there. So I'm good with that. And I like having as many brains as possible helping me. So I'm good with that.
Okay.
There is one error I made in the draft for type 3 applications. I wrote down the shot clock is 60 days. In reality, the shot clock for that should be 90 days. So there are 2 types of revisions I'm going to add automatically. One is changing the shot clock for type 3 applications to 90 days. And I'm going to add 3 definitions, which I find I've been advised by other municipalities. In working with them, they think I should add into the ordinance. So I think it's good. So I'll just give you like a 3-minute nutshell. Okay. The ordinance is designed to vest the town with the maximum power to control the number and placement of wireless facilities. It is not designed to stop all 5G facilities or stop all wireless facilities. It's nothing like that. It's to give you the power to control where they go and to ensure that when you exercise that power, you do it in a way that complies with what are largely procedural requirements of the Telecommunications Act. The wireless industry would have you believe that you have no power, your hands are tied. That's nonsense. As long as you know how to exercise the power, it is available to you. Now, consistent with making sure you comply with the requirements, the ordinance is set up to divide new applications into 4 types. The reason is each type would involve different types of requirements and to what they must submit with an application. There are different shot clocks. It also has a critical function for what I call a gatekeeper, the person who first gets the application, whose job it is basically is to make sure to identify what type of application it is, because that dictates the shot clock, and make sure they give you all of the documents they need to have a complete application. And if necessary, to reject it within the time you're allowed under the TCA. This gets rid of 80% of the mistakes that towns make. And please understand, when I drafted this, it's based upon federal case law. I've looked at all the cases in the past 25 years where towns got sued and the town won because they did this right, or they lost because they did this wrong. And all of that is built into this. So that's the nutshell. So with that said, I'll open the floor to you guys. You tell me anything you want to talk about, any questions you have, I'm happy to discuss it.
Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is I'm going to start out by sharing my screen and I will share the document. I'll share the email that I sent you because that's a summary of what people had. So let me just, let me pull that up and then let me share it. Okay. And it's going to be, it's a lot of print here. Okay. And so we'll do this and then we'll do the, we'll go through some of the document where Ed and I put updates in. So some of the main comments that are in here, and the first one was a real biggie. And that is, I think that it's possible that you jumped at the conclusion, logically so, that if we have a light industrial or a neighborhood commercial, that meant that was a better place to put to make it easier for somebody to put a tower.
Right.
I think pretty much everybody says, oh my God, because our light industrial and neighborhood commercial are either there are residences within those districts or they're right
Okay.
next to residential. And that's not really, that shouldn't be any easier than it is to put it in another residence. But if we
Okay.
have to pick a place to make it easier, then we'll take it upon ourselves to pick a place and let you know. But light industrial neighborhood commercial, we wanted to make changes because that you know is like you know, like fingernails
Yep.
screeching on the blackboard. Oh my God, that's terrible. So
I have no problem with that. That's perfect. Okay.
okay, do we need to pick a place to make it easier, or is it okay just to take out the things that say it's easier in those places?
You can take out the things that make it easier, so long as there's a process by which applicants can seek relief, just like applicants can file applications for variance if it's not permitted in a
Right.
certain district. As long as the mechanism through which they can try to seek relief from the restriction, it's perfectly permissible.
Right. Okay. So that's good. So you'll see that a bunch.
Okay.
And you know what I'm going to actually do, and this is a trick that I have done so at times, is I'm going to forward this. And the reason I'm going to forward this is then I can make notes. And I'm also going to see if I can meet. There you go. So you can all see this. So actually, I will ask you if anybody raises their hand. I can't see anybody now because I've hidden all that. But if
David's
anybody-
raising his hand.
Who is?
David.
David. Go ahead, David.
I was wondering what would those little antennas that they put on the light poles,
Right.
how far away can you make them
What minimum
how
distance
far away
requirement
can you say they have to be from a residential district?
Okay. So what we do is, and it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, because in one place, the standard lot might be 50 by 100. In another place, it may be 3 acres. And so generally we pick a typical minimum setback requirement. Let's say it's, for argument's sake, at least 150 feet from any existing residential structure, unless it's going on a pre-existing utility pole. Now that doesn't mean they get it. What that means is, if it's if it's more than 150 feet, if that's the number you choose, it means it doesn't violate the setback requirements. However, they still need a permit, which means there still must be an application and a public hearing. And then the planning board gets to review each permit application on a case-by-case basis. So there's no blanket. What happens is, each time they want to put one of these things on a utility pole next to someone's house, the board will take a look at the potential adverse impacts, commonly things like adverse aesthetic impacts, reduction in property values, lack of sufficient fall zone. And the planning board has the power to grant or deny the applications on a case-by-case basis. So again, the goal is to give the town the power to control them on a case-by-case basis. If you simply adopt an ordinance that says you can't put them in any residential districts, you make it very easy to successfully challenge the code.
Well, how about if you set a setback for them?
Yeah, as I said, you might pick a setback of at least 150 feet from, for a small wireless facility, at least 150 feet from a residential structure, or for a cell tower, whatever, 500 feet from a residential structure. That's up to you. But setting that setback alone does not dictate that they can't come in or they can come in. If they don't meet the setback requirements, doesn't mean they can never put it there. On the other hand, if they do meet the setback requirements, it doesn't mean they can put it there. That only governs whether or not they need a variance, but they still need to get a permit. So they still need to go before the planning board and get the planning board's approval for each and every facility.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let me keep on going down this list and putting your answers in there.
Okay.
So the next thing on this list, Steve Romine had noted about the American Disabilities Act.
Yep.
Because he had shared the document that you had sent, that I sent around to everybody, that was, I think, from 2020, but in any
Right.
event, had a lot of good stuff in it. Anyway, So Steve was asking if it would be appropriate to add American Disabilities Act information to the draft law. Would it be appropriate to add anything about ADA accommodations in the applications? What would it mean to add it? And is it a good idea? So my question to you, Andrew, is it a good idea for us to try to add anything? Because, Steve has somebody in his household that is
Right.
very sensitive, and some
Yep.
people are sensitive,
Yep.
very sensitive to the radiation, more so than others.
Yes.
And so what is the answer about the ADA?
I have a lot of information on this, so it's going to take a little time to explain, okay?
Okay.
Generally speaking, I recommend local governments include ADA provisions in their code. Many local jurisdictions have them, okay? You are correct that some people are sensitive to RF radiation levels, even those which are within the FCC's limits. In my view, that would constitute a disability under the ADA and under federal law. If someone was to demand a reasonable accommodation from the town would be required to, number one, make a determination if the person is disabled within the meaning of the ADA, and number two, if they are, what a reasonable accommodation would be, either move the facility back far enough or reduce the power so it won't adversely impact people. Now, in full disclosure, I must tell you, I have a case pending in the Ninth Circuit in California. I have a client that had a home on the top floor of a condo building. They installed a cell tower 9 feet above his head. He got extremely sick and had to move out. He got a professional opinion letter from his doctor saying that he suffered the classic signs of overexposure to microwave radiation. I filed I served a demand upon the city for an accommodation. They ignored it. We filed a federal lawsuit in the United States District Court in the Northern District of California. The Northern District of California dismissed the case, said that under the telecommunication, the judge said, I'm not deciding whether or not EMS sensitivity is a disability under the ADA. And I'm not deciding if the Telecommunications Act preempts the ADA. My position is, the federal court's position is that you can't force a local government to regulate based upon health, and thus asking for an accommodation in the form of moving the facility or reducing the radiation level would violate federal law. That case is on appeal before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. My brief is filed. Their brief is due next month. If I have to, I expect that case to go all the way up to the US Supreme Court. And here's why. The only federal agency that has ever passed on the issue is the United States Access Board. They exist for the sole purpose of identifying what does or does not constitute a disability within the meaning of the ADA. And their position is, if someone's symptoms are significant enough, adverse symptoms are significant enough from RF radiation that it impairs their ability to go through the normal functions of life, then it is a disability. So you can put in a provision that requires accommodations under the ADA. You may, however, get sued for it. If you try to force a carrier or site developer to move facility or to reduce the power output, they may sue you. Now, the decision is from the Northern District, the Ninth Circuit, which is not necessarily bind on the Second Circuit. But when I draft these ordinances, I tell my municipal clients anything that may potentially expose them to the threat of litigation. And by the way, if they fight you and lose, you don't pay attorney's fees, you don't damages, but you get dragged into court. So I'm telling you, you can put it in. I think you should put it in. But the reason I put in reserved for now is that until I get a decision from the Supreme Court, this is what I'm drafting into my ordinances unless the local government asks me otherwise. I'm sorry for the long story, but that's the current state of the law.
No, I'm happy with the long story. So I think what our answer is, well, and I'll ask my zoning revision committee, and I'll need to go look at people for a sec. I'll stop sharing for just a second. So I'll ask the zoning revision committee, does anybody, I mean, I would say we ask Andrew to include it. Well, so here's the thing, Andrew, and we're hoping to move this law through as soon as possible, but that can still take 3 months. Moving the law through can still take 3 months. So that being the case, if we ask you to include it now, because my thought is it would make sense to include it, but then I know you'd be having to do it in a careful way because you don't want to include it in a way that we know we're going to get shot down if there's a court case.
Right.
So that being the case, does anybody on the ZRC not want me to say, Andrew, please include it? You know, I think that we should say, go ahead and include it in the way that you see fit. So, okay. So I heard one yes. I didn't hear
I say yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yay. Okay. So I will come back here and say, ZRC agrees to ask.
Yeah, it would not take long to add that. I can do that fairly easily.
Yeah, okay, okay, thank you. So I keep doing a save draft so I don't lose all of our good stuff. So the next thing, there was some conversation and it kind of went back and forth, and I think you may already have some of this in here. But the point being that the zoning law needs to address ongoing testing of radiation levels generated by the towers.
Yeah.
That you had three choices in your document that I mentioned that was your 2020 document, analysis document. To make a long story short, one choice is the town handles, one choice is the town is reimbursed, another choice is a qualified private citizen does it. And just we're making a point that we need to make sure that somewhere in the law, it does talk about the town doing the ongoing testing and whether or not, I guess it's a town decision, do we want to have a qualified private citizen, or how do we handle it? Because I'm not assuming with these choices as you would be, Andrew, town handles, town is reimbursed, qualified private citizen. But we do need to make sure we have a go forward maintenance that is defined of what we're going to do. But then the other thing too is if the tower's on private property, we have to be able to have whoever we hire that is not part of the owner of that property needs to go on there probably to do some things.
Yep.
So that's and then the other, and this kind of goes on to what we have down here, that the current law, which is you're going to replace the current law, provides an RF engineer to do radiation testing, measuring it on a regular basis, and if it's out of compliance, or the law needs to say that we're going to mandate remediation, but then also we want to say if they really are not doing what they need to do, we need to be able to revoke permits. So I didn't recall, as I'm reading all this, and I didn't get the last 7 pages, I didn't remember the law going into all this that talked about our maintenance, our steady state, how are we testing the radiation levels, and what can we by law do if things are not good. So what are your thoughts about including some of that stuff?
Okay. So yeah, this, as I mentioned earlier, the problem with the safe levels of RF radiation set by the FCC is that they're not enforced. The FCC never tests them and never requires the owners to test them. So, and the wireless industry knows that. So they can have these things emit any level of radiation they want because you can't feel radiation. So one of the things local governments do is they adopt testing requirements. Now, the safest one to do is to do it where the town has the authority at any time to do random testing. You don't tell the owner when you're going to do it, you just test it. Now, if a facility is emitting radiation levels which exceed the FCC's limits, there's really only two possibilities. Either they've deliberately increased the power output to exceed the FCC's limits, or the equipment is malfunctioning. And by the way, I've never encountered a case where that's happened. And so what you can do is you could say, okay, we're going to do random testing. And if we find that your facility is exceeding the FCC's limits, we're going to schedule a hearing. And you, the owner and operator, have to show cause why we shouldn't revoke your permit and fine you. So we're going to set a hearing within 30 days. And if you can't show us that the excessive radiation levels was due to the equipment malfunctioning, we're going to revoke your permit. You have to rip it down, or we'll rip it down and you'll pay us, and we'll fine you $5,000 first time, $10,000 second time, whatever you want. Because once you give them a permit, it's a vested property right, and you can't deprive them of that without due process. They'd have a 1983 action, you're stealing property rights. So by afford them notice and an opportunity to be heard, you satisfy the constraints of due process, if you want to do that. The best part of this is you don't have to test them all the time, because once the carrier or site developer knows there's random testing, they never ever want to get caught having a facility exceeding the FCC's limits. It's bad press. So as long as you put it in there, and even if you test one facility once a year, the threat is out there, and that will cause them to basically comply with the FCC's limits. That's
So how expensive is it to do? Is it going to be expensive for the town to get the right equipment?
You don't get your own equipment. You basically hire an RF engineer so you can find them. For 4G in New York, I've had people find people that do it as cheaply as $400, so it's not that bad. The biggest problem is with 5G. There are very few facilities or equipment that you can use to test 5G. And right now, my understanding is the companies that manufacture them only serve the wireless industry. A municipality cannot hire a company to do 5G testing. You're going to have to find an RF engineer who's willing to do it and who has the equipment. It's only a matter of time. They'll be out there. I think this year they'll be out there. But I can refer you to an RF engineer. There's a brilliant RF engineer from Connecticut, and I can give you his contact information. I'm sure he can hook you up with somebody who can do the testing.
So option 2, the town being reimbursed. You're saying option 1 is the
town pays for it.
What's
Right.
that?
The option number 1 is the town pays for it. Option number 2 is maybe you do one a year and you make the owner of the facility pay for it. That is something that they'd definitely be more willing to challenge. And if you put in there, you can do as many tests as you want. They have to pay for all of it. If the testing gets expensive, they will challenge you in court. They will say that this violates the Telecommunications Act.
Okay. So then,
the relevant position of the relevant language of the Telecommunications Act, it says that you can't regulate wireless facilities to the extent that a facility is FCC compliant. So the general authority exists to do regulations, but then there's an exception, which is you can't regulate based upon health, but there's an exception to the exception, only to the extent that it's FCC compliant. So the minute you test and you find it's not FCC compliant, you can regulate.
Okay. So I'm still adding my notes here. So Andrew recommends. Okay. So then my other question is going to be, I didn't recall seeing anything in the law that I read that said that talked about this steady state thing. So is that in the law? I just missed it because about this steady, what I call it steady state, meaning the tower's up and we're going to do this testing periodically, and we have the option of revoking the permit or having a fine. I didn't think I saw that in the law. Can we be asking you to add that to the law?
I thought I put that in the end. If you find it exceeding the FCC's limits, I may have just put in a fine as the first draft. But you can either just put in a fine and the fines can increase, or you can actually have a hearing to revoke their permit. This is up to you, how aggressive you want to be.
I think aggressive.
Okay, then I can put in there that, and I put this in other jurisdictions, you will schedule a hearing and the applicant has to show cause why the permit has not, should not be revoked. And to do that, they have to show that the excessive radiation level was not the product of them increasing the power output intentionally, but it was solely caused due to defect of the equipment. And they have to show that.
Right. So, okay. So I'm
and
just
then you have to figure out who's going to have that hearing. I guess you could have it before the planning board if you'd like to.
Okay. That law includes.
I didn't see it.
Well, how do you
Go ahead, Ed.
how do you find that the equipment is defective and causing increased radiation?
Once your RF engineer shows the level of radiation exceeds the FCC's limits, they would have to produce an expert witness to say, listen, we used this device, model number XYZ. Given the power output, it only should have been generating this amount of radiation, this density, this strength. And apparently what happened is that the transformer shorted out, and that's why the power went up. It's their burden of proof. Once you get a test result that shows they're exceeding the FCC's limits, they got to show why. It has to be some equipment is defective. And then it's up to the board as a finder of fact to determine whether or not they prove that. So they're going to get an expert to say, listen, this model device is manufactured by TBS Corporation, and this is the way it's designed, and it didn't work that way. This is what happened. It burned up. It did this. It did that. And the planning board, as the finder of fact, will determine if they met that burden of proof.
Does this ever happen?
I've never had it before because every time a local government puts in those testing requirements, shock of shocks, they don't exceed the FCC's limits.
Okay, well, that's good news.
By contrast, where they don't have testing limits, multiple facilities have been found to be exceeding the FCC's limits. And then the neighbors call the FCC and complain, and the FCC does pretty much nothing.
Okay, so I've added so I put in here that we are asking you to check the law to ensure it includes regular checking by the town. Should I say regular or regular random? A regular
Yes,
is
random. Yep, random.
It says random, not regular.
Yep.
Yeah, because they're not the same. They're actually more on there. I can't do both. Okay. So, okay. So Andrew, I'm saying Andrew check the law, and I'm not hearing anybody saying no. Andrew check the law and ensure the law includes random checking by the town, and if radiation exceeds limits, the town able to force applicant to go to a public hearing, and if they can't show technical failure, town can fine and or revoke permit. So Andrew, did I say that properly?
Yep, that works.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and I think that covers everything that was up here. The law, okay, I think that that's good. And I know Rex is not on here. I'd made notes that Rex had made that it's good that you provide information on macro towers as well as small. Rex had an excellent document. Andrew, I thought it was an excellent document as well. I thought it was overall very easy to read. I thought it was extremely comprehensive, and I was very happy. I'm very happy with it. I also have a ton of markups, but that's just me. That's just how I operate. But as I look at it, it's like, wow, I was very happy with it. So so anyway, that's that. I'm just going to see if there's anything that Rex had that yes, Bill, officer in charge. Okay, so I think that we're good on there. So I'm just going to do a save draft, and anyway, I'm actually just going to go ahead and send this to you. I know it looks a little funky here, but I just go ahead and send it, and then that way you
That's fine.
got it. We both got it, and you got the words that are in there. Okay. So okay, that's good. So what I'm going to share now, I'm going to read the chat first. Okay, Jeff says he's got to step out. He's got a 7 o'clock meeting. So what I'm going to, let me come back here. Let me close that. So the document, and this is going to look massive, and it's a massive document, but I think that a lot of the things are, I'm just going to go through what's in here. The first thing is, it would be nice to have had page numbers. I printed the thing out, and I hand wrote every 5 pages. I hand wrote the page number so I could deal with it. So Ed, and I can send this to you here. And this is the first time the zoning revision committee is seeing this. Although the only person left, I think, let me just go do a participants. Andrew, David, Ed, Janine, Judy, Raji is on. Steve, hey Steve, welcome, Steve, welcome Raji. You know, Ashley, I'm going to say go ahead and unmute anybody that does want to talk, because if they're talking at the wrong time, I'll just tell them. But and I've told Steve that he's welcome when we talk about the telecommunications. He's invested so much personally. I've told him for the purpose of this discussion, he's kind of one of us. So and I'm going to zip over for a sec and just write down attendees, because I don't have everybody on here, and then I'll come back and so we do have Steve. We do have Raji. I'm gonna see who else we have. I already knew we had David. I know we got Ed. Ed, Steve, we have somebody on the phone. We have Janine, but I knew that already. Judy, I knew that. Raji, I've just added in Weston. We have. So we're good. We have a really good group now. Anyway, so Ed, and these are just comments. And if anybody, which really is David. At this point, I think Jeff had to go. We're down to 3. Oh, Judy is on. Oh, we have a quorum. I'm sorry. We still have our quorum. We have Jude, we have David, we have Ed, and we have me. So of course, I've already got comments on Ed's stuff. Ed's seeing my comments for the first time. Jude and David are seeing all of our comments for the first time. If anybody disagrees with anything, let us know. But otherwise, we're going to zip through this as fast as we can. And if everybody likes this, I can send this to Andrew too, and he can be working with it. So first thing is, Ed made a comment that the ordinance should be updated to be the zoning law. It's itty bitty print. I'm assuming, Andrew, you can see what I'm showing.
I can.
Ed's comments are very itty bitty. Okay.
Yes.
So he's made the point, should be zoning law, not zoning ordinance.
Okay.
He added the words prior to down here because, and I noticed that too, you had a sentence that didn't kind of start out right. So he just added the words prior to. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
If we come down, I didn't know what CFR was.
Code of Federal Regulations.
Should I know that? Should that be defined somewhere?
I'll put it in the definition section.
Okay, so I'll leave that comment in there. You said, regulated structure, this historic structure, any structure that meet the definition of a regulated structure. I didn't see it in your definitions. I searched in the zoning law. I didn't see it. Maybe it's in there. I couldn't find it.
Okay.
But I don't know where that, you said it's in the definition as defined in this
Um,
chapter.
Yeah, a regulated structure is a structure that is either on the National Register of Historic Places or is eligible for inclusion in the National Register. They're both protected under federal law and state law.
Okay.
So I can add a definition of regulated structure if I didn't put it in.
Please define.
Yeah,
Why
that,
did I-
that, that would be important because the town has one national registry property, but
Okay.
there's other properties in town like the Como that are eligible for national registry, but it has never been applied for.
Okay,
So if you could do a little definition, it would help that. Thank you.
yep, yep.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just put please define, and I can just send you this document. It'll look a little scary, but it's not as scary as it may look. Because I think that something's not here. Okay,
Okay.
so I was reading your definition of necessity, necessary or necessity or need.
Right,
And you say any situation involving a choice is not a need or necessity, but you may need to do one of the choices. So I'm not sure if I agreed with that, because even though any one of the choices maybe isn't a necessity, but
right.
you may still have to be choosing one of the choices. And your definitions seem to say, oh, if you have a choice, then it's not a necessity, even though you still maybe have to pick one of them. So I thought there was something odd there that maybe should be looked at.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut down where they set up straw alternative locations where they say, well, there's 5 different locations, but I just had an adverse decision in a zoning case. I think it was in Idaho, where a local town board said, well, they can't use the other facility because there's no public utility lines nearby. Well, that doesn't mean it's not available. So if the point is, if the applicant has a choice to put it at a less intrusive alternative location, but they don't want to simply because it's more expensive, that doesn't mean they have to put it here. That's what that's intended.
Right, okay. That
But if you want to change the language, I'm good with that.
only if there is a workable choice. I think just clarifying that there is, it's not a necessity if there's a choice, only if there is a workable choice still left.
That's fine. Yep.
So okay, so that'll be the statement there. Okay, and I'm doing saves as I go along because I do documentation all the time and I save all the time.
Okay.
Okay, and you can see there's a lot of pages with nothing, but we'll get to some pages that have a lot of stuff.
And by the way, I didn't put page numbers because in most jurisdictions, when I get to this section, it can't start from page 1 because it's in the middle of the zoning code.
Well, you're correct about that. Although I will tell you, our zoning code is all online, so people are told we don't get printouts of the zoning code anymore. The town clerk says if you want to see it, look for it online. But for the purpose of this being a document review, page numbers would have helped. But you're totally right. When it actually gets merged in, page numbers won't help. But for review, it might have helped. That's all.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So anyway, I just added the SWF because I thought the SWF belonged there. So I just typed in SWF. That's pretty minor. Okay. Okay. And here Ed has pointed out, instead of saying ordinance, this word should be law. So he didn't actually change it in the text, but that's pretty easy. And everywhere where you said special permits really ought to be special use permits.
Right.
I don't know why it, because that's how it, and Ed knows this because he was one of like 5 people or 3 people that wrote the zoning law. So he knows this. So it should be special use permits. And I say agreed. Please update everywhere, because we've kind of called that out of their places.
Okay.
Okay. So, down here. So this is the place where Ed went ahead and, so we talked about the neighborhood commercial and light industrial, and Ed's recommendation is this just get deleted. So I just said agree. I mean, Ed says remove it. I agree. I think I think everybody's in agreement with that. Type 1 zoning districts. He changed the text to say in all zoning. So he changed a little text there. I think that's fine. Again, this should say law instead of ordinance. So what you'll see is when I made updates, I actually turned on tracking. So my stuff winds up being tracked. I think Ed did what I asked him to do, which was he highlighted things and then he put a comment over to the side. So
Okay.
you have a mishmash, but you'll be able, I'm figuring you're not going to make this your master document. You're going to read this and fold these into your master document.
Right.
So I'm not worried that there's kind of a mishmash of how Ed did it one way and I did it the other.
Okay.
Because I figure this isn't your master document anyway, but this has what we think is there.
Okay.
So Ed also removed the sentence, and actually I should, before I go forward, I'm just going to open things to make sure I'm not missing anything. He changed ordinance to law,
Right.
it says remove the underlying text, which is good. Text changed to in all zoning districts. Yeah, there's the in all zoning districts, so that's
Yeah.
good. Change ordinance to law, I did that. As I recommended above. Down here, again, and make sure you open up these twisties to make sure that you're seeing everything as you go through here.
Okay.
Because, and I put in here, I agree we need to avoid making it easy to put wireless. We need to avoid making it easy to put wireless in LI and NC. Should ask you if we need to pick another place. And you said, I heard you say, no, we don't need to pick another place because the law does allow, as long as they can find relief. So you'll need
Yes.
to let us know if you think the law still allows for people to find relief, because we still want to
Okay.
follow the law.
Okay.
So Ed's recommending that come out, and I agree. And then all this underlying text, which is this whole section here, would come out because you're talking about if you're NC1 or LI, here's what you do, and you got a whole list of stuff. This would all come out. And here's Ed's, get all that out is what Ed says.
Okay.
And then I certainly said I agree, need to avoid, make it easier.
Okay.
So we've already been through that. So all this comes out. And and then I said, if you delete this section, this building is sitting there, something happened with the indent. But if the whole section leaves, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Here again, we have special use permit. We're putting the word use in a million places, but we've already
Yep.
said, please do that everywhere.
Yep.
Now I made a comment here also that I noticed that, and I just, I highlighted a space just because I wanted to add a comment here. But my question really is, let me fix my typo here. My question really is that in type 4, you require a special use permit and a site plan. I
Right.
thought for a type 3, you would also need a site plan because you're doing a construction of a new thing. So
Right.
wouldn't you therefore need a site plan? So my comment is, shouldn't you also require a site plan? Same as for type 4.
Yeah, it's entirely up to you. But again, it's a small wireless facility, so it can be something as small as 30 feet tall, but it's within your power to require a site plan, sure, if you want that.
Well, why not? If you're putting something new on a property, why not require a site plan to say exactly where it's going to go? Because otherwise, they may say it's going to go here, and they put it there, and you agreed
Yep.
to here, but you didn't agree to there. And where's your
Yeah.
site plan? If you don't have a site plan, you
Well,
got no.
But many of these, many, if not most of the new small wireless facilities, what they're going to do is they're going to install equipment like a DOS node on a pre-existing utility pole. So would you
But
want
this
a
is
site
new.
plan?
But
Yes.
type 3 is new. Type
Correct.
3 says it's construct new. If it's new, I would
Correct.
think you want a site plan to say where you're going to put it. Otherwise, you might get it where you didn't think you were going to get it.
Yep. Yeah. No, it can be added. Put it in. I'll add it in if you want it.
So yes. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna I had it somewhere here, and site plan.
Yeah, just mark it up so I remember everything. I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, so you got it marked up. I can. go
Oh,
through it.
it's all marked up. Yes.
Yeah.
Please add this to type 3. And you may or may not know, but I in my day job, I do a lot of this. It may show or it may not show. So anyway, and now Ed had a comment here that suggests the town board designate, and I don't know if we as a board want to go here or not, because as you point out, there may be ways we can put it. But the Lake Hill Firehouse in the far end of town, it's not very built up. There aren't people everywhere. It's the old NIMBY, right? They're not near me. I'm happy if you put it
Right.
out there, but the Lake Hill people probably wouldn't be happy. But there is a firehouse. There's a stretch of road where you're driving along, and there's not stuff, and then there's the firehouse. Then you go in, and then there's like not stuff, and houses are far back from the road, and there's kind of trees, and so I don't know whether we'd want to recommend a place like the Lake Hill Firehouse or not, but it's a thought that Ed had put out here, and I don't know if that's what we want to do or not, is recommend something. But, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and talk to the ZRC. And how do you all feel about whether or not we recommend, go ahead, Ed.
Well, that part of town, the western part of Woodstock, does not have cell phone service because of the way
Right.
the town configured its tower on California Quarry. And anyway, half of the town does not have cell service. And
Mhm.
I just felt it was good for the health and safety of all these Woodstockers. What if one of them was trapped in a ditch and needed to call
Sure,
911?
right.
And I was just thinking it could be a source of income to the Lake Hill Fire Department, or it could be a
Oh,
source of income to the town. I mean, I don't know if having a modest sized tower on the Lake Hill Fire Department property would in fact provide enough cell service for the back half of Woodstock, which
Mhm.
has no cell service. Not.
Right.
It just occurred to me. I don't, I have no pent up passion for this thing, but I think if whatever we could do to alleviate the problem of no cell service for half of Woodstock would be useful.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I don't know whether it's something that we put in the law. Go ahead, Jude.
I was going to say, I think you're going to get a lot of pushback for that. So I don't think it would actually solve the problem, because the people in Wittenberg, there's a mountain. My understanding is that's a problem. But I don't think the town should be recommending it. I think you're going to see a lot of pushback. My question is, okay, so I'm coming into this, well after this is all started and everything. There's small wireless facilities, right, that go on poles.
Right.
Would that not provide, I mean, that seems to me like that would be a more efficient way of getting cell service to the western part of town, because you could be going down 212, you could be going down Wittenberg Road, you could get a lot, there'd be a lot more areas. I will tell you, I live in Willow and I live up on the mountain. And recently, for some reason, I have cell service. Not always, but mostly. When we lost our power, that time we lost it for 3 or 4 days with that ice storm, I was able to use my cell phone, and I never have here. And people get texts when they come here. I don't know what's happening. If that's coming from like the Shandaken side or Trumper Mountain or whatever, but some of us are getting cell service. And I know,
Yeah.
like down at the Willow Post Office, I don't know if they have a booster or what they have, but I get texts whenever I go to the post office. So I'm just wondering if there's another way, now that there are these small wireless facilities, or whatever we're calling them, that, doesn't involve a tower. You're going to have some very angry people. I'm not in favor of the town recommending it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so we may make it so it's possible, but not a recommendation. We may just make sure that the law doesn't negate it without it being a recommendation. And I agree, because there's NIMBY and you're going to get people. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, so take it out. I was just trying
okay.
to solve a problem. I'm very practical. I'm happy to take it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Can
So
I say something?
Oh, go ahead. Who's speaking?
Steve.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to say that a cell tower. Hold on, let me get rid of the. I got to get rid of the volume here. I got double volume because I'm on the screen and I'm also on the phone. So anyway, I just want to say that a cell tower on a firehouse may help those people in the area to have more cell service, but it certainly won't help the firemen. The firemen will be affected by the radiation from that tower, and the International Union of Firefighters are against cell towers on fire stations because they have found that people the firefighters don't perform as good as without a cell tower. It affects their abilities, many cognitive abilities, and it affects them with fatigue and a host of other conditions. So yeah, I agree with Jude. I don't think it's a good idea for different reasons. I don't think it's a good idea on the firehouse.
Yeah, okay. Well, so it won't be something we recommend in the law. So, so I'm just gonna reply and say, ZRC, agrees to not, if I put not, implement this suggestion at this time. Okay, so you'll see that, answer. Let me kind of come back and see if I can get that to, so let me scroll down. So, yeah, I'm just, oh yeah, I'm not sharing my screen, so let me go share my screen again. It would be helpful if I shared. Okay, so I've added in here ZRC, which is our group, agrees to not implement this suggestion at this time. So, so you'll see that, Andrew, when you come in there, that we're saying, okay. So I'm going down here to the reasonable periods.
Right.
And my question here, let me get my mouse back. I have a touch screen, so it's better with the mouse. There we go. Should we state how long? I was concerned when I was looking at the timings of things, especially when you only have 60 days to do something, because different groups can chew that up. So the building inspector, we're not really saying how long they have, but if time is chewed up by the building inspector, then the planning board gets less time. And then what you'll see further on down is when your law goes on to say that if you need additional information, you say, hey, I need additional information, and the shot clock stops, but then the building inspector gets it again. If every time the building inspector got it, they need 3 days to review, hypothetically, because she's a busy person. And so as long as she can drop everything and look at it, it may take her 3 days to be able to fit it in with all these urgent things she's doing. She's got a lot of urgent stuff going on. So my worry is that you could be chewing up a lot of stuff, and then you get the additional information, she gets it again. Sure, if it's incomplete, the shot clock stops, but it might have taken her 3 days to look at that. You chew up 3 days here, 3 days there. You may have to have a public hearing. You have to have 2 weeks notice for the public hearing. You might have to go to the ZBA. I was concerned with the time frame specified, because it seemed like time could be, the planning board might be left with 2 days to do something, which isn't enough based on all this junk that could happen. And I didn't like it, but it may be the law, and you maybe can't do anything about it.
Okay, so a couple of things. Yes, it's but it is the law. It's co-location of small wireless facilities. There's a presumption. The shot clock is a presumption that you have to make a decision within 60 days. Now, one of the things that can help you is you set up essentially forms which the building inspector should complete when an application is received. And basically the building inspector goes down a checklist. So a checklist may say what type application, 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's a 4, here's this form. You have to submit this 16 items. Check off which of the items are here and which ones aren't there. And that stays in the front of the folder, so that if then the applicant submits something else, he or she compares that to the existing list and says, they still haven't give us item 14. That's the way you can do that. But you're right. Under the law for co-locations of small wireless facilities, they only give 60 days. However, that is a presumption. As long as the town acts with reasonable diligence, it could be argued that the delay was reasonable.
Okay.
That's why it says in here, it says that these dates are presumed to be sufficient.
Okay.
If you look right above that, it says to comply with sections of 332C7B 2i, it says the following shock period set forth in shall be presumed to be reasonable periods.
Okay.
With which the planning board will render determination. So you're supposed to do in that time, but if you exercise due diligence and you still can't do it in time, you're okay.
Okay. Okay. So that's not something that we put in the law, but we just know that.
Yep.
Okay. So, okay. And that's a good answer. So, okay. So, okay. Okay, I got you. So no change needed. Okay, cool. So the next thing, I didn't know where these things were. I-26 O, P, Q, and R. I didn't know what that was. So I would
No,
need to know
that's a
what-
mistake. That should be, it should be 260-64. That's a mistake. It should be 260-64 OPQNR.
should be 260-64.
Yep.
Right.
That's a
Right.
typo.
Okay, but even then, when I looked at 260-64 OPQNR, were force majeure, 11th hour, and prohibition, and I guess that's correct, really. Okay.
Yeah, so for example, if a historic site review takes more time, then
Okay.
you can, the delays are due to circumstances beyond the control of the town board, and so
Mhm.
you don't violate the shot clock if you don't get it done in time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, gotcha. I got you. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So please update. So you'll update that. All right. Andrew, please update.
By the way, in type 1, where it says within such notice of incompleteness,
Mhm.
I'm going to add 2 definitions. One is for notice of incompleteness
Mhm.
and notice of effective prohibition conditions. Those will be 2 additional definitions to be included.
Yeah. Okay. Type 1, page 13. Yeah. So I didn't really, yeah, I didn't make a note of that, but that's okay. I'll just say adding 2 definitions. On page 13. Okay, type 1. So what I would have liked, and again, I do documentation all the time in my day job. I do business documentation all the time. What I would have liked as, I'll open up what my comment is. I would have liked a table to be put up here
Mhm.
that had type 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know whether you have it on the y-axis or the x-axis. I don't care whether it's the header or the column on the left, but put type 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put what the dates are, the shot clock dates, and then put them in the table so I can see at a glance. Because if I want to know type 1, 2, 3, 4, I had to flip 4 different pages and read the
Okay.
text to figure it out. But if you
Okay.
had a table up there that just said the total time is 60 days, you have
Right.
to do your right. If it's incomplete, you got to do it within 10 days. If they
Right.
send you update, you got it back to them in 10 days. And if
Right.
there were a nice table, it would have that. And then I didn't even know if you needed to repeat these 4 sections because the wording looked pretty much the same. You
Right.
might just say, here's what is, here's then what all the verbiage is. And then
Right.
only type 2, 3, and 4, just say what's different. Because it looked like it was the same words. It's just, so I thought a table would make it easier. Okay. So that's what I said. Okay. So I
The
heard
way
you
I
say,
drafted it was that if I'm thinking of the building inspector, when they see the application come in and the applicant says, this is a type 2 application, he doesn't have to read anything else. He goes right to section 2 and it says type 2 applications, and it tells him exactly what to do.
but it's the same words as type 1, type 3, and type 4. What's
Mhm.
different is the days.
Yep.
So if the words are all the same anyway, just put a table up top that says you're going to define this as total days is 60 days. You're going to
Right.
define this as
Well, the rejection of an incomplete application period is different for a cell tower than a small cell.
Well, it's a different days, but that's why you have a table that says if you're
Right.
type 1, your days is 10. If you're type 4, your days is maybe 30 or whatever.
I
So you
could
have
try
it in
it. Right.
What's that?
I've never done a table like that, but I can try. I can put something together. I'm not perfect. I'll try it.
There you go. Do you
Okay.
want me to try to put a table in there and as an
Sure.
example? And
I
okay.
take all the help I can get, especially with
I
smart
will-
people who know what they're doing.
I will. I don't know if I'm a smart people that knows what I'm doing. I do Word all the time.
Okay.
So Laura, put sample table in.
Oh, you can get Word for $51.
So yeah. Okay. Sample table in, and that's on page
Otherwise,
13.
you gotta.
Okay. So I'll put a sample in before I send this to you, and we'll
Okay.
see what happens.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, so here's the thing. Here we are, 2022,
Mhm.
and it's just me, but our building inspector is a lady.
His
So
or her designee.
it can be his or her or their. I don't
Okay.
care if it's his or her or their, but it shouldn't just be there.
You're correct.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, okay. Let me say Andrew to update to his or her or okay. So gonna update his or her there. and then we have that again.
Yep. I can track that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I'll just put it down here. Okay. So we're good. Whoops, I don't know what the heck that was. Yeah, this doesn't copy really well. Update.
What page are they on? Why, got an appointment?
To
Probably pretty far.
he or she, or there. So it's not he or she or there, but I mean he or
Yep.
she, or you're gonna put there.
Yep.
And don't ask me why it became bold all of a sudden. I didn't do it, but there it
Don't worry
is.
about it.
Okay. So should be there. What happens if the application? Yeah. So what by law are we in the soup? If the application is realized to be incomplete, but it's noticed after 10 days, are we in the soup at that point?
Well, the shot clock just continues to run.
Oh, so we may get information back saying it's incomplete, but the shot clock is running. So so we don't, but that, you're saying if it's day 12 and I tell you it's incomplete, then the shot clock is running while they get me the information.
Correct.
Whereas if I told them within 10 days, the shot clock
Stops. Yep. So they file an application for a small wireless facility. That starts the 60-day shot clock. If the building inspector notifies them within 10 days, the shot clock stops. When they give the additional material, it resumes running. If instead he tells them for the first time that it's incomplete 12 days into it, the 60 days does not stop. It just keeps on running.
Okay. I'm just making a note here. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So we don't need to change the law. I get it. So explained, no update requested. Okay. So explain that no update requested. We've already talked to be they. Oh, here's the other one. We might need a definition of submission. The reason being, I don't know what submission is. I don't know whether it's the date something is postmarked or the date, because when I submit something like my income taxes, there's the date I put it in the post box, and it gets stamped as a date. But the date that the IRS gets it could be different. But in the case of the IRS, they say we'll accept the postmark date as the date of submission. However, when I pay some other things, they don't count it as paid until they get it. So is submission the date we get it, or is the submission the date that they postmarked it?
The submission typically in any zoning matter is the date it's stamped received. When you go to a clerk for a zoning board and you hand them something, they have that stamper, they stamp it. So I can add a definition saying the submission being the date it is stamped received by the clerk for the planning board or whoever receives it.
Okay.
So tell me who would receive an application, and I'll put in there that the date of a submission is the date it is stamped as received by, and you tell me who.
No, who receives it?
That places a burden on the applicant to get the submissions stamped.
Okay, so page 13. Who
He already
receives
change.
these and stamps them received. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so I'm adding a note in here. Add another note. Okay, Laura, to ask who stamps these as received. So that's my to do there. So you'll add it. So I got a note there. Andrew will add it, but you need to know that. Yeah, and and here's where, and you've already said that it's not the case, or you've already explained this. That I've already talked about the shot clock and the 60 days, and a lot of things could chew that up. And you've already explained that. Andrew explained. Okay, as is. Okay, so we've already got the answer for that. So that's okay. because you've explained that there is due diligence and all that.
So there's a mistake,
Um,
type three applications, that has to be 90 days. That's a mistake I made.
Oh, this is the one right here says 90.
That's got to be 90 days. The 60 days is a mistake.
Okay.
And it's written like 3 times in there. It's got to be changed.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll put a comment.
Actually, I think I've already changed it in my draft. So
Yeah. To change to 90 days. Each place. Okay. Okay. We're good. All righty. I keep doing saves here so I don't lose anything. So I think we're good. Yeah, and I just said this should be bold if you're consistent, but if you merge these sections and put it in a table, then you'll have a shorter document and as much. Okay. Oh, we've already got same answer as before. Go to handle.
What happened on 36? Oh,
I'll fix the typo in a minute, Laura, to find out.
you're on 36?
Food stamps. Okay, so we've already handled that one. Yeah. Andrew explained. No change. Okay, so you've already explained that. Okay, so we are moving right along here. Yes, it should be special use permit. Because we said this should be special use permit, so yes. Yes, it should be.
Got the changes there.
I've already asked you to change that everywhere. And this is just a, capital versus small. I noticed those, I put those things on. Oh, so I was curious about this, where engineers report to the extent an application proposes the co-location on existing tower should provide an engineer's report. Well, if you're going to put it onto an existing tower, you want the engineer's report. Don't you also want an engineer's report if it's a new tower? How come you're just talking about the engineer's report if it's an existing tower?
well, I think that I assume that automatically in your standard applications, that's already in there. I don't know what your current requirements are for filing. So usually that's already in there, but I can add that, yes.
Andrew will add. Well, I think why not? Yeah, and I think you're far from your mic, Andrew, because I can hear you, but not as clearly.
Sorry. Yeah,
Okay,
usually
well-
with any new tower report, they're always going
Right.
to submit an engineering report.
Okay, we'll add.
But the difference is
Also.
when it's a co-location, the tower was initially designed presumably to support the one facility, but now they're adding all this additional equipment. But
Yeah.
I can modify that to say for both.
Well, I think you might as well, because it's nice when people see everything they need to know all in one spot. They don't have to be going back and forth through the law, because I hear you. Okay, yeah, and there's a biggie. There's 2 blanks there. Again, I read documents all the time. I just told you there's 2 blanks there. That's nothing. Yeah, and again, I found when something should be capitalized or not,
Yep.
which is nothing to really worry
My
about.
grammar needs much to be improved.
No, we're pretty good. Oh, okay. So for this one, I put in here a comment. Why isn't this item also a rule for a small wireless facility? It says no portion of any telecommunication tower or accessory shall be used for sign or advertising purpose, sign greater than 2 square feet, blah, blah, blah. All signs should conform to the sign requirements of the town. So you put that about signs on the telecommunication tower, and I would need to go find out. The context of this. Accessory structures, telecommunications and personal wireless service facilities, which do not need, which are not a small wireless. So you say if you're not a small wireless, that you can't put a sign on it. But if you ever, why don't you also have that rule for small wireless? You're saying if you're not small wireless, you can't have a sign, but I don't want a sign on my small wireless
Scroll back up again.
either.
Let me see that.
Okay, so we're in a section
Right.
that says telecommunication towers and personal wireless service facilities which
Right.
do not meet the definition of a small wireless
Yep.
facility.
Yep.
So if you do not meet the definition of small wireless, you go on to say you can't put a sign on it. But if you
Right.
do meet the definition of small wireless, I don't want a sign on that either.
Right. Usually they don't put signs on those because typically speaking, and I hate to overgeneralize, but usually the power output is much lower. But theoretically, you're right, with the 5G, the power output will be increased. So I guess I could put that no signs.
But I think Woodstock doesn't like signs in general.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it just seems to me.
I just generally speaking, I've never seen any signs on DOS nodes. So, but again, if it's a small facility, but it's a 5G, the power output is going to be higher. If they think that someone can get close enough to expose themselves with radiation levels which exceed the FCC's limits, that's when they put up signs. Generally speaking, I've never seen either a DOS node or a small wireless facility where they put up a sign, because the wireless companies, including the site developers, don't believe the signs are required because nobody can get close enough where their exposure would exceed the FCC's general population exposure limits.
But I think the point here, though, is that if you have a large tower, somebody may say, oh, that's an opportunity to put a big billboard up because everybody's going to see it, because here this tower is real tall. Everybody's going to see my billboard. I want to advertise on this large tower. So you're saying you're not allowed to go advertise on your large tower, but you're not saying you can't advertise.
The signs usually pertain to the radiation emissions. That this is within FCC's limits. Don't get closer than this. You may expose yourself to excessive levels of radiation, something like that. But I'm welcome to any kind of language you want to put in there about signs. If you think they're going to use it for billboards, then tell me what you want to add. That's fine.
Well, but you say for advertising purpose. So you're indicating here that somebody might be wanting to put a billboard up on a large tower. And I'm just saying, so I just ask you to look and see if it makes sense. It's not a biggie, but if Andrew, to see if there is this is only my item. Maybe the rest of the zoning revision committee is saying, Laura, you're way off base. So if I am way off,
I see what you're saying. You signed for other advertising purpose. Yeah, that came in. Yeah. God, what municipality gave me that? It might have been from Idaho. I'm not sure. But like banner streamers, I never see anything that stuff. But I put it in there because maybe there are places where they try to advertise. I haven't seen it, but I guess I put it in there and I've been keeping it in there.
It can be. I'm just putting it in here. If it can be smoothly added, but it's not a biggie. So if you can't smoothly add it, I'm not going to worry about it. And it's just, I noticed that was an omission. And I'm going to look for a moment and see. I see some chats. Yes.
Wouldn't that be something that you would put in the sign section of the law? You can just say no signs allowed other than safety on any wireless facilities. Couldn't you just add that to the section of the law that deals with signs?
Well, this is the only section that deals with signs, and it only talks about being on large towers.
No, I mean the
elsewhere in the code.
Right.
Well, but here again, you're putting it here for the large towers, and I say, why not put it here for the small towers? You're right. There is a section of the code for signs, but I wouldn't want to take it out of this part for the large tower. And just, I'm thinking if you got it for large tower. Well, let me ask. So let me stop sharing the screen for a minute so I can see everybody.
Couldn't you just put something that says that signs are only allowed to
safety?
Safety, yeah.
Well, I'm happy to do that, but my point being, this statement is only under a statement that says it's not a small tower. So it's saying if it's not a small tower, then you can only put safety signs. I'm saying if it is a small tower, you can also only put safety signs. And so I'm just saying if there's a place to smoothly add it for small wireless, to smoothly out to the law, if there's no place to smoothly add it, because he's got a whole list of stuff, if you're not small, here's other things you need to worry about. So if there's a place to add it.
How about all towers?
Yeah, well, there you go. So, right, but the point is, Andrew said it right here, but this whole section only has to do with large towers. It doesn't have to do with small towers. I'm just saying, see if you can find a spot in the law where you might put this about small towers. So anyway, I'm asking Andrew to see if there's a place to add to say no signs on small wireless. And if you can, then that's good. Okay. So here I've added, under here, I've added any tree cutting after approval of the special use permit must be in accordance with the approved site plan. So I added this sentence. I don't know if anybody has an issue with me having added it, but you don't really say anything. You say don't cut trees before you have the special use permit, but you never say, oh, by the way, once you get the special use permit, you can only put the trees where the site plan said to put it. So I was kind of connecting the dots there.
Well, normally as part of the special use permit process, the board is going to ask about removed vegetation. I've never seen one where they didn't ask that. So that's
Right. Okay. So if you I can
you
remove,
could add that.
well,
We have
okay.
we have a problem in Woodstock of tree cutting before a permit is given, and anything we can put in our zoning law to force them to get a permit before they clear cut is good.
Yeah. Well, right, because we do have a clear cutting problem. So that's, yeah. So I think okay to add. Okay to add. So I think we're saying it's okay for Andrew to add that. Okay, here I just caught a capital. It should be a capital. I added the word is because it was, this sentence was missing a word. That's kind of a small thing. And we've already talked about the 60 days being chewed up, but we've already talked about that. Andrew explained. No change. You've already explained that. Special use permit, we've already said fixed about the document. Okay, Andrew to change. We've already got that. So we're moving right along. Yeah, I added the word, I think you want one or more. You have like one or, and there's a blank. I think there's a more. And I added a B in there because you had an A, you didn't have a B, so I put the B in there. So that's
Okay.
just a grammatical thing.
Okay.
That can look in later. Okay, so here's the thing where we talk about evidentiary standards.
Right.
And then you say for evidentiary standards, the planning board you're talking about here may require an applicant to produce the evidence they may require the applicant to produce are the following.
Right.
Well, my point of confusion here was you've already written the application. Theoretically, the building inspector would not have accepted the application if without all these things in there. Almost everything in here, 3 out of the 4 things were already required in the application. And that's my phone I'm ignoring. I'm just going to see who it is. I'm ignoring it. So it seemed like a duplication. It would have seemed to me, like I said over on the side here, that maybe what you say is you point in this section back to the application to say the planning board is expecting everything that the application is supposed to include, and then only list here what wasn't there. Because when I looked at items A, C, and D, I thought these things were the same things as in the application. So I was confused by reading this, because if they're already supposed to receive it in the application, why are you now saying, oh, this is evidence the board's going to consider? Well, you already said it had to be in the application. So wouldn't you say here that, you got the application and the board's going to consider all those things. In addition, they
Let me
might
explain.
consider
Okay.
item B.
The
What was
section that talks about the application is really drafted for the benefit of the building inspector, who's charged
Okay.
with the initial responsibility of initial intake and figuring out if it's complete or not.
Okay.
This section is intentionally designed for judicial review. One of the things that's been happening in litigation is, under federal law, local boards have the power to decide what evidence they want to require
Mhm.
applicants to produce when the applicant claims that there's either a significant gap in personal wireless service coverage or a
Mhm.
capacity deficiency.
Okay.
Sometimes what happens is local boards ask for evidence, the applicant does not provide it.
Mhm.
Then they turn it down because the applicant didn't give the evidence. The applicant files a federal lawsuit arguing that the board had no legal right to deny it based upon a failure to produce evidence, which the local zoning code didn't say the board had the power to require them to produce. So this lays out specific types of evidence that your planning board has the power to require the applicant to produce. They don't have to, but they can. And if it ever occurs that the planning board says, I want this, this, and this, and they don't produce it, this preempts an applicant from claiming that they exceeded their authority by asking for that specific type of information.
Mhm.
Because unlike previous cases, this code specifically says the planning board can request it. And if it ever gets litigated, I just have to point a federal judge to this specific section and I win.
Okay.
So this is
Gotcha.
drafted based upon federal litigation that I've seen again and again and again.
Okay. Okay. Good answer. So no change. No, okay as is. So we're good. And we're doing well here. Oh, okay. So here's an area where I was confused. We're in the local zoning determination, local zoning determination. And I kind of come down here to this paragraph down here. And we're 2/3 of the way through the document, but neither Ed nor I had any comments on the last 7 pages of the document. So we're actually, we're getting near the end of where the comments are, just in case anybody's getting tired here. Anyway, so the subparagraph A, here and above, which I'm assuming is this A, but this paragraph, I didn't know what you were talking about there, because I think that this paragraph is still part of A, because B starts right after it. So you're saying the evidentiary standards sets forth in paragraph A, here and above, but there's A's all over the place. So
Okay.
I
So
just
you
said
could
maybe
you could just take out in subparagraph A here, and just take out subparagraph A. So it says, if when applying the evidentiary standards set forth here and above.
perfect.
That's it.
Perfect.
Point.
Okay.
Point.
So I'm going to delete. Okay.
Who's on?
So-
Somebody talking?
Or maybe it's a phone message.
Oh.
I thought I heard it too. I thought I was nuts.
Okay. The words. Okay. Oh, and then I say, unless the board additionally finds denial of the application would constitute an effective prohibition. My question was, wouldn't the applicant, and it says application, but it means applicant.
Right.
Wouldn't the applicant need to provide evidence for this? I mean, how is the board going to know you have effective prohibition unless the applicant said, hey, we got effective prohibition? So.
Okay. This is the magic question. This is the most important part of the whole thing. And here's
Good.
why. Okay.
Okay.
So under the general authority provision of the Telecommunications Act, local governments have the general authority
Whoops.
to deny applications for the installation of wireless facilities based upon traditional considerations. Like, it should be treated like any other zoning application. If a proposed use or structure would have an adverse impact on nearby properties of the community, you can deny it based upon things like adverse aesthetic impact, reduction in property values, not consistent with the character of the neighborhood, insufficient fall zones, so on and so forth. However, under subparagraph C7B of the Telecommunications Act, it imposes certain restraints on that power, one of which is that local governments may not prohibit or effectively prohibit the provision of personal wireless services. Now, when the Telecommunications Act was adopted in 1996, immediately, every time somebody turned down an application for a cell tower, the wireless companies filed federal lawsuits saying, oh, they effectively prohibited us from providing personal wireless services. From 1996, it took only 2 years to go up to the Circuit Courts of Appeals. And the Circuit Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, came up with a test. And the test is, for an applicant to claim that a denial of an application for a wireless facility is an effective prohibition, the applicant must prove both that an identified carrier suffers from a significant gap in personal wireless services, and 2, that the proposed installation is the least intrusive means of remedying that gap, and there's no potential alternative, less intrusive locations. Those are both questions of fact. Now, question to you: who gets to make those factual determinations? And the answer is, if your code gives your board the power to make those factual determinations, then your board has the power to make those determinations. So your board gets to decide what evidence to ask the applicants to produce It gets to decide the weight to be given to evidence and to make those determinations. The applicant does not come in and say, we have a significant gap in personal wireless service, so you must grant our application. No. So long as the board makes a fact-finding function and there is a sufficient amount of evidence in the record to support its determination, federal judges are loath to overturn local zoning board determinations. They do not want to be zoning boards of appeals. So the board gets to determine, A, has the applicant proven that an identified carrier has a significant gap in personal wireless services? And B, has the applicant proven that its proposed installation at the specific site it wants it, at the specific location on the site, at the specific height they want it, is the least intrusive means of remedying that gap, and there's no possible less intrusive alternative locations. If the board finds as a question of fact that the applicant has not met hasn't proven either of those things, one or both, then the board can deny the application without violating federal law, so long as it issues a written decision where it addresses the evidence based upon which it made those determinations. So one of the most common ways local governments get sued is where a carrier or a site developer wants to put a cell tower 10 feet from Mary Smith's front door. And the applicant comes in and says, we have a significant gap, least intrusive means you have to let us build it. And the planning board says, you got to be kidding. You're going to put this 10 feet from her front door. It's going to destroy her property value and have an adverse aesthetic impact. And it rules based upon that, and that alone, it denies the application. You're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get sued. Because the applicant goes to federal court and said, look, we've introduced evidence of a significant gap, least intrusive means. The board not only didn't render a factual determination, they didn't even address the evidence or lack thereof. And you lose. So by putting the power in the hands of the planning board to make those factual determinations, the board gets to decide whether they meet that standard. Now, how would a board figure out if this is a significant gap? Especially because the Telecommunications Act does not define what a significant gap is. I've given them explicit guidance. What's a gap? They have to show there's an actual gap in the wireless coverage. And they get to consider, okay, is the gap significant? How many customers are affected? Is it affecting 1 square block or is it 15 miles? And those 15 miles, are they heavily populated or is it scarcely populated? It's a fact by fact analysis, case by case analysis.
Okay. And so to make a long story short, then, in answer to my question, and in fact, I think you go on to explain some of those things in B and C below. Least intrusive, all that. So in answer to my question, the point is you want to leave it with the planning board to make those determinations. You don't want to say, leave it to them to ask the applicant what they want to ask and to do that. So so I think okay as is what
arm them with the knowledge of what documents they should ask for. I spoon feed it to them. It's easy. I don't expect them to be RF engineers, but you don't have to be. As long as someone tells you what to ask for, you'll know exactly what to do.
So when it comes to education of the planning board, is it up to us, or are you gonna? So you're gonna have will you be able to provide us with some cheat sheets, like you're saying, for the planning board, so they know, because they're gonna get this law, but there's stuff that the law doesn't say that you're explaining to us that they need to know. So should I be educating them based on what you've told me, or do you have a cheat sheet for them?
I don't have a cheat sheet. What usually happens is I agree to have a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting with the planning board. And explain to them just the general. Again, if somebody explains to you, it's not rocket science. It's not that difficult. It could be a little intimidating if you just look at this, but when I explain it to them, anybody's been on a planning board for any length of time, they understand the procedures, they understand what their job is. This is a little different, but once you do 1 or 2 of them, it's like you're an expert. It's not that difficult.
Right. Okay. So, and all that makes sense. All right. So okay as is. So I've made that comment there. So we're moving right along. Then you have, no reviewing agency shall be obligated to proceed unless the applicant complies with escrow deposit requirements. So you're saying on the one hand, no reviewing agency should be obligated to proceed, but you didn't have to actually say, does that stop the shot clock? If the applicant has not given their escrow and nobody's obligated to proceed, does it follow that the shot clock is stopped?
I would argue that it does, because they can't place the town in a position where it's got to current expenses, which the applicant, it's kind of the functional equivalent of the applicant not paying the initial application fee.
No, I agree with you, but the point being, since this is a law, would it make sense to connect the dots and say,
Yes, and the whoever is responsible for notifying the applicant that the application is incomplete should list that as one of the reasons it's incomplete.
well, oh, okay. So instead of saying right here, this stops the shot clock, it needs to, so the, absence
Yeah,
of
like I just
escrow.
put in there that not paying the filing fee would stop the shot clock. I don't even know what your filing fee is. So again, the building inspector, when he or she receives the application and she describes what's defective, she would say, by the way, you didn't pay the filing fee. And it's no different with the escrow deposits.
Okay. Don't need, okay. Don't need to also say it here. Okay. All right. Absence of escrow is one thing that makes the app incomplete, and therefore, don't need to also say it here. All right. So, I'll need to check to make sure it's in there. Laura, page 37, check app requirements for fee. And it probably is in there. I'll just go double check. Okay. All right. So no need to also say it here. So we're good on that one. Oh, back to Ed. Here we go. Okay. So Ed is taking out the sentence about NC1, NC2. So he's just going to saying take that out. And I think you're agreed that this A can just come out. Right?
Yep.
Andrew agrees. And then we've talked about small wireless not built within 1,000-foot boundaries of so then you would change the numbering because you took out something here, because you had an A and a B, so it's a little weird.
See now, if you go back to if you go to the second A where it says all residentially zoned districts 300 feet, and you want to make it 500 feet, the question is, if you have a minimum setback of 500 feet from any residential dwelling, would that wipe out the entire town? I don't know. If you wipe out the entire town by imposing a 500-foot setback requirement, you're making it very easy to challenge. That's the problem.
Right, and I don't know. I don't know how. So you're asking us to pick 300 or 500.
I'm asking you to figure out what you believe is reasonable given the zoning districts and the size of the plots of the properties in Woodstock. If everybody's got 5 acres, then 500 feet may be fine. If everybody's on 50 by 100-foot lots, then 500 feet is not plausible because it'll wipe out 90% of the town. It's an effective prohibition.
It depends on where you are in town.
Yep.
If you're in the hamlet, if you're in the hamlet, houses are, buildings are on top of each other.
Yep.
And if
So
you're
we
in
could-
Bearsville, there's a lot of buildings. If you're out in Willow, there aren't a lot of buildings.
So you may want to differentiate based upon districts. If there's a hamlet district where the lots are bigger, you'd have one setback. If you go into another residential area where the houses are much closer together, you'd have to look at that. But again, even if an application meets a setback requirement, that does not mean they can build it. It means they still have to go for a permit.
Okay.
And the planning board gets to review each and every application on a case-by-case basis, as they should, and determine, is this really bad? Is it going to have a significant adverse impact on a house which happens to be 150 feet away or 300 feet away? So again, just because it complies with setback requirements doesn't mean it can go up. And just because it doesn't comply with setback requirements doesn't mean it can't go up.
Okay, so we owe you an answer on this. So that's kind of my question here. So we owe you an answer. Oops, sorry, need to pick a number.
So I think also, Laura, that what he's saying is true, that it might be, that number might be different in different districts.
Yeah, okay, good point. Let me fix my, okay. And that was, let me see what page that was. That was page 38. Okay. Page 38. We owe Andrew answer. Okay. So then we're here. Small wireless facilities should not be built within 1,000 feet of boundaries of Bird Cliff Natural Register of Historic Districts, nor within the hamlet.
I would not recommend you use 1,000 feet there. I would recommend you use a shorter distance. And I will tell you this, elsewhere in the code, it talks about, again, small wireless facilities are physically smaller than cell towers. So 1,000 feet is a large setback. Now, the section of the code, and I think it's, let's see, it's 64P, provides that in the event the planning board believes that a proposed installation may have a significant impact on the historic integrity of either a historic district, historic building, or a district or building eligible for inclusion into a historic district or on the National Register, the planning board can require a historic review from the FCC. Every wireless facility is considered what's called a federal undertaking. So if your planning board makes a request to the FCC for an historic review under Rule 106, they must conduct that review. They will then reach out to the New York State Historic Preservation Office, and they will conduct a review. So it is relatively easy to reach out to authorities to conduct proper historic reviews. SHPO will look at things like the potential view shed from a historic property to the proposed facility. So I really don't think it's necessary to have 1,000-foot setback, maybe for a cell tower, but I don't think so for a small wireless facility. I think that's too far.
Well,
Go ahead.
so could I just put in here that you're going to rework this to language that you think is better suited?
Yeah, well, I got to look up the Bird Cliff National Register of Historic Districts. I have to look at that because I don't know where the boundaries are.
I have them.
Okay, so what exactly is that? What is the Bird Cliff?
It's the original art colony that was founded in 1903.
Okay.
And in 1978, all the properties in this original historic art colony were placed on the National Registry of Historic Places.
Okay.
In the text you have provided for this section, you just say historic, what do you use? You say historic district or you say historic place. And I have the map. I'm on the board of governors for the Woodstock Guild, which controls this property. So I have the map of the 1978 Registry of Historic Districts.
Right.
And then the zoning law also has the Hamlet Preservation District,
Right.
which is downtown. And there's a whole set of regulations controlling the Hamlet Preservation District. So
Okay.
I don't care about the number. I mean, I just think if you're going to talk about historic districts,
Yeah.
these are two.
Okay. You know, I don't know if you wipe out everything within 100 feet of the boundaries of the districts. Does it wipe out 98% of the town? I don't know. I don't know. But for a small wireless facility, 1,000 feet sounds far. You know, I would.
Well,
I could
what's
see
a number
500 feet.
then?
I could see 300 or
500?
500 feet. But again,
Okay.
if there's any possibility that could adversely impact the view from from a historic district,
Yeah.
that in and of itself is a sufficient ground to deny the application. So even if they meet the setback, it can still be turned down.
Okay. So we'll change it to 300 feet then.
I would probably say 300 feet would probably be sufficient. I mean, it's
Okay.
clear that the historic significance of these districts are recognized, and that gives you a much stronger position in terms of preventing any facility that would adversely impact those districts.
Okay. 300 feet.
Okay. Now, is there a typo here, Ed? Registry.
Registry.
Yeah,
RY.
yeah,
Registry.
Okay. Okay. So I made that change. I don't know if you can, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'll
it's
get it
registry.
straight.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Oh, so I was just saying down here, but we still owe you an answer. I mean, do we on the call here want to just say 300? I feel like I'm shooting from the hip. I don't really know. But within a residentially zoned other district, small wireless facility, setback a minimum of 300 feet. Do we think we would just go with that because 500 seems too far? Or as Jude was saying, maybe it's different for different districts. So we'll think about that a little bit more, I guess. Okay, I'm kind of moving right along here, and we're actually almost done, believe it or not. So I didn't know why you went back and forth between calling these personal wireless personal service facility and then personal wireless service facility.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're not consistent everywhere.
Yeah,
So I
it
would,
should be consistent. It should be consistent. I'll fix it.
okay. So, okay, so I just say Andrew.
Yeah, I build these piece by piece for jurisdiction, and sometimes I get a little punchy when I get towards the end.
Yeah, and that's all right. I believe me, I get it.
No, it's a well-written law.
Thank you.
It really is, and I agree 100%.
It's a very good law.
Yeah. So I know Ed removed text about NC1, NC2, and LI1, which we're in agreement with. Whoops, just say agreed. So it's already removed it from here, but from your master document, please remove. Oh, so Ed, you had said the previous document said 60 and 45, and you mentioned 100.
Yeah, I
for
don't know
the-
why I mentioned 100. You can make it whatever you want.
No, Ed mentioned 100. Yeah, what Ed had done when he took out the words about the NC1 and the LI, the wording did have, I'm looking at it, the wording talked about maximum height of 60 feet in NC1 LI and not to exceed 45 feet in the other zones. But you have 100 feet here, and I think, wouldn't you want to make that 45, which is the smaller number that Andrew had?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I would probably be inclined to go to 60 because
Okay.
the new poles now it used to be the standard utility pole was 35 feet in length, 5 feet went in the ground, and they stood 30 feet above grade. The new utility poles are 45 feet. They go up 40 feet above grade, and you're going to find your facilities going up another 5 feet above that. So if you go to 60, that's reasonable for these small facilities.
Okay. All right. And it's better than the 100, which
Yes.
because when Ed cleaned this out, he went up with 100, but I think that 60 is a better number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although Andrew, in your document, you did say if it's NI, if you said if it's NC and if it's LI, you could be 60, and otherwise it's 45. But you're saying now 60 is a better.
I think, yeah, because you're kind of wiping out the other jurisdictions, like the other districts I talked about.
Yeah.
Light
Okay.
industrial, again, I wasn't aware that, residents are so close to the light industrials. That's why, I tried to persuade the owners of facilities, put them in the commercial areas, put them in the industrial areas, try to keep them away from homes. That's a goal,
Yeah.
which is a reasonable goal. But
Yeah,
if you tell
okay.
me that neighborhood commercial and light industrial really doesn't make a big difference because the homes are right there, then it's got to be changed.
They're very small districts.
Okay.
Correct. And the homes are really right there. Okay. So here's one where Ed, it looks like you didn't take out the neighborhood commercial or light industrial. And I think that you want to take that, maybe this whole thing should have come out. Type one
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Ed.
What page?
Well, yeah, it looks like page 40.
Oh, 40, okay. Yes,
So is this whole sentence supposed to come out?
yeah, yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
The whole paragraph. That's all right. You got all the other ones. Type 1 applications for co-location shall be permitted use. And we are going to delete that. Andrew.
Laura,
Yes.
if you just go back one line, you can correct the other, just go up a little, just there, that 60 feet, just maximum height of 100 feet.
Oh, but this is different though. This is for the non-small. This is for the large.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it was personal wireless there.
I'm sorry. Tell me again.
It says personal wireless service facilities.
Oh, well, so I think you're onto something here. So height restrictions for small wireless facilities, number one. Number two is non-small, but you're right. Then it says personal wireless facilities. Oh, but it says personal wireless facilities that do not meet the definition of small. But this is odd to say if it's a personal wireless facilities that do not meet the definition of small. So we're saying there is a personal wireless service that is not small.
Using personal wireless service facilities interchangeably with the other ones. But yeah, there's two types. There's small wireless and anything that's not small.
But are they both personal? Do you mean to say
Yes, they're
wireless
both.
service?
All
Is the word-
these all of these wireless facilities, cell towers, macro towers, small cells, DOS nodes, they're all personal wireless service facilities because their function is to enable carriers to provide their end use consumers with personal wireless services. The
Okay.
phone service.
Okay, so that's good to know. So all cell towers, I'm just making a note for myself,
Are personal wireless service facilities.
are
And that's
personal.
laid out in the definition section, I believe.
Yeah, probably are, but I take you. I'm sure you're correct. So
Yeah.
there we go. So all cell towers are personal wireless services. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I think we're okay on that because it's the large tower. Yeah, because it says non-small, which equals large. So I think we're okay. Okay. So I was making a comment here, residentially zoned, just to make sure almost every district has or permits residences. So type 1, I'm just making the comment. There's nothing to really change here. In any residentially zoned district shall have special permit use, special permit. Yeah, and here again, use again. So just look up. Yeah, it's going to be use again.
Yep.
I'll just add it in there while we're in there.
Yep.
And just say, whoops. Andrew. No
In my
change.
own defense, all day long, I switch back and forth from jurisdictions that use the term special permit and special use permit.
Well, no, no. As Ed said, and as I said before, I think you did a fabulous job. You given us a fabulous document. There's not very much substantial we're changing here. The LI and NC is substantial, but other than that, we're doing some cleanup. But you've done a fabulous job.
Thank you.
So, and I guess the answer to this is yes. The zoning board of appeals has to happen within the shot clock time frame because everything. But as you've already answered that. So Andrew explained. This is okay. Okay, and that might be the last comment. But I will say I didn't read the last 7 pages, so I didn't get to that yet. So that's the last comment, I think. Yeah. So we've reached the end of the comments, and I'm going to do a save again. Now I can. Oh, go ahead, Jude. I see your hand raised. On mute. She's on mute.
You're muted.
When you get to talking to people, I just wanted to, you finish what you had to say and then I'll with my comments.
Okay, so my question was going to be, Andrew, so there's a couple of things that we owe you. The main thing that we owe you is the answer on how many feet on page 38. And we don't owe you, other than that, I don't think we owe you. We owe you who receives who stamps the, can't read my own writing.
Documents which are received.
Stamps
application.
And that's going to be a problem because what law are you going to make that forces a secretary of an entity to stamp something? I don't
Well,
think.
at least we know what department stamps it. We'll know what department stamps it, even though we're not going to name a person, but I think we'll know what department. So we owe you that for page 13. We owe you the answer on the number of feet. So we owe you a couple of answers, but Andrew, will it help you if I send you this? You watch me make the markups that give you direction. Should I just send this to you as is along with that email that we looked at before? And then you kind of have everything and just we like owe you 2 answers, or Are you not going to get to this for like a couple of weeks and I should hold on to it? So what do you want?
No, you can send it. I'll start working on it this week's type, but I can definitely start working on it next week. I mean, it shouldn't take that long, although there's a fair amount of changes, but I can do it.
Yeah, a lot of them are, you change the capital O to a little
Yeah.
o, there's some of
Yeah.
those, and then there's some other stuff. Okay, so send to Andrew. So, and let me ask, and before I get to Jude, because I know people are, I know Ashley unmuted people, and I think they're on mute now because they wanted to mute themselves. So was there anybody that you watched the process? People didn't say no. We were really just reviewing what Ed updated and what I updated. I didn't hear anybody saying no, so I'm assuming everybody's okay. But now's a good time to say, if I covered anything that you disagree with, before I send this to Andrew, now's a good time to say if I covered something you said, no, wait, that wasn't right. So let me know if anything wasn't right. Nope, I think everybody's done. It's been a long meeting, I know. Let me ask one more
Hey,
question
can
before I
I
get to
say
Jude.
Can I
Go
say something to
ahead.
Steve?
Somebody else want to talk?
Yes, Steve, I think Steve wanted to say something.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just want to ask a question because I missed the first part of the meeting. So was that ADA going to be included in?
Yes, we asked Andrew to add some language on the ADA.
Wonderful.
And yeah, so, but Andrew put some caveats around it because he's, as he always does, he's watching the laws and he's seeing who wins a case and who doesn't win a case, what gets thrown out, what gets upheld. So it'll be a tricky thing for Andrew to put the language in that he's confident will get upheld in court, but he is planning to give it thought about the right way to add it so that it's added in a way that it can be upheld in court, because not everybody's winning their court cases about ADA, is what I heard Andrew say. But Andrew will add something that he thinks is appropriate.
Excellent.
So yes, just that.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Andrew.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So Jude, what did you want to say?
Okay, I had a question about the use of the term shot clock, because
Oh.
I don't think that shows up anywhere else in the zoning law in terms of timeframes or anything like that. So that's just something to think about.
Oh,
Okay,
and is
so-
it defined is a good question.
Right. Well, the funny thing is the shot clock exists under the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which, by the way, doesn't have the word shot clock in it. When the
but he's
Telecommunications Act was adopted in 1996, one of the 5 constraints it imposed upon local governments, which was really a procedural constraint, was it says local governments must act on applications for personal wireless service facilities within a reasonable time. That's all it says. And so the FCC came up with an interpretive order, which has been now deemed the shot clock. And originally they said for new cell towers, you have to act on the application to make a decision within 150 days, no matter how you decide, or for co-locations on a cell tower, it's 90 days. And the term shot clock was arrived at. And the shot clock periods are presumed to be reasonable, such that if a local government does not render a decision within the shot clock period, it is presumed to violate the Telecommunications Act, and a federal judge will order you to grant the permits.
I wasn't questioning the timeframes.
Sure.
I was just questioning the usage of that.
The use of the term.
right, but
So
he's defined. It's in the definitions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're doing is
It's in the definitions.
we're taking hold of those periods and saying we're going to comply with the periods deemed presumed to be reasonable by the FCC, but we're also saying if we act with due diligence and it takes longer, from our position, we're not violating the reasonable time requirement under the Telecommunications Act. I am putting the town in the best position so that it doesn't violate the constraint and it is clearly able to defend itself from claims that it did violate that constraint.
Gotcha. Okay, my second question, and maybe this is not the right forum for this, is I've been watching a few planning board meetings, and there's been a lot of discussion. There's some applications before them now for the tower that is on town-owned property. So all these laws still apply. It doesn't matter who the owner is.
Mhm. Well, under New York State town law, towns have the ability to enact zoning code. So the town legislative body can adopt the zoning code and it can say whatever you want. In fact, the town board can enact a provision that says by the way, any properties owned by the town are exempt from the zoning code. But if your zoning
Wow.
code doesn't say that, then your town-owned properties are still subject to the requirements of the zoning code. And if it says you need a special permit for a cell tower or a variance, it has to go to the planning board, it has to go to the ZBA.
Right.
But there's a definite separation of powers. Once you adopt the zoning code, only the zoning board of appeals has the power to grant variances or grant waivers. And it's their power and their power alone to interpret the zoning code. In fact, members of the town board cannot even serve on the ZBA. So there's a separation of powers. If the town does not put in its code that town-owned properties are exempt from your zoning code, then the town's decision to put up a cell tower on its property has to be subject to all the requirements of your code. Special permit, variance, whatever else may be in there. Building permit, they all apply.
I think they've been going through the process. I was just curious if there are any special, so the owner really has no override to what the FCC allows.
No.
I just want to ask a question on what was just spoken about, and that is, if the town puts that in the code to exempt the town from having to follow the zoning code, town properties, then they basically can do whatever they want in that particular administration. Is that correct?
Not only can they build it without filing zoning applications, there's no public hearing. So the residents don't get notice. So the tower goes up before the residents even know that it's being considered. That's a problem. On the other hand, what's supposed to happen is there's supposed to be a public hearing where they provide notice when they decide to enter a lease agreement with the carrier or site developer who's going to build the tower. So theoretically, you would get notice of that, but very often when they publish that notice, they publish in a newspaper legal notice, which nobody ever reads. So that you got to be careful about.
So it's kind of dangerous to actually exempt the zoning code
I
for
always
any town to
recommend
do that.
against it.
That's kind of
The whole
dangerous,
pur-
depending
the
on
whole
who's in power.
Zoning codes are adopted to protect your neighborhoods and your property owners. They set standards. Local governments recognize that certain uses of property are inconsistent with other uses. You don't put a sewage treatment plant right next to somebody's house. And for the same reason, you have zoning districts to separate incompatible uses, and you adopt permit requirements to prevent the irresponsible placement of wireless facilities. It doesn't matter if it's going on town-owned property or privately owned property. And so I advise towns, don't exempt yourself from the requirements that pertain to cell towers. Let your planning board and your ZBA do their job and figure out if a proposed location for a wireless facility is consistent with the smart planning provisions of your code. It protects your town, it protects your communities, and it protects most of all your property owners.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So, okay, that was good, a good answer. So anything else? So we actually did, we never did our formal zoning revision committee agenda. We never formally, and we
Sorry.
lost Ed. I think Ed had mentioned earlier that he may have to go. So anyway, so we're down to 3, so we can't do any official zoning revision committee business, but we've gotten through everything that we intended to in this meeting. So I think that we're good. So I will send off the marked up document to everybody. I'll also send the email that the people watched me mark up when we were at the beginning of this meeting. I'll send that off to everybody. So everybody has all the materials. We have a couple things that we need to figure out how to get answers back to Andrew on. And is there anything else anybody else wanted to say? And I know, Steve, I'll ask you a question. I know that, you know, you've been extremely passionate about the telecommunications. Are you feeling okay, Steve, that we're taking the right steps and we're where you're hoping we would be?
Yes, I definitely am, and thank you for your diligence, Laura.
Well, thank you for your diligence. So we're teaming up here. so that's good. Is there any? I guess is there anything before we adjourn?
Thank you.
So I had a bunch of agenda items that we'll do them later. I'm sorry, Jude. I shouldn't have talked when you talked.
I just said thank you, Andrew, for all your time and patience.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Andrew, for a wonderful document. Because I know we had a pile of tweaks to it, but the meat of it was there. And so we're just polishing it a bit, but the meat of it was really there. And thank you, Andrew, for that. So yes.
You send me that
absolutely.
email with all the tweaks. I'm hoping to get it done next week. I'll have it a draft.
That
finished.
that would be fabulous.
Okay.
So-
Laura, I have a question. So
Yes.
when you get the document back from Andrew, what's the next step?
Well, so theoretically, the zoning revision committee, I think the zoning revision committee should take a look and say, yeah, we think that now it looks the way it should, and it would kind of go back to the town board. So the town, everybody got Andrew's document, the same one that we reviewed. Everybody meaning the town board got it, the zoning revision committee got it, and Weston, you and Steve and Raji and Rex all got it. So and Janine, who was here and she's not here anymore too. So anyway, there was a whole set of people that said they were interested that I made sure got it. So so when the zoning revision committee thinks it's right, so we've done a good review and I think we've made some good improvements. When we get it back, I'll have the zoning revision committee look at it again, and then I expect that we'll then send to the town board. So we'll probably look at the updates. And Andrew, when you send because again, the tweaks that are in the document I have, I'm assuming that you're not going to use that document at all. You're going to have a master and you'll copy over, hey, they said do this, you'll put it over in that. And they said do that, you put it over there. So that you're going to be making changes to your master. And I'm assuming that you're going to put on tracking changes. So it'll be easy for us to see what's different.
Yes, it's a little more difficult for me, but yeah, I can do that.
Because if you don't do tracking changes, we need to read the whole thing start to
Yeah,
finish.
no, I understand. I got it.
But if that's the way you'd rather do it, I just want to know what to expect. It'll
No.
take us longer to review it if there's no
Yeah,
change.
no, I'll put them in. I'll put them in.
Okay. So Andrew will track changes. Okay.
So Laura, when the town board looks at it, will they vote on it?
Well, at some point. So Andrew, what I maybe would want to propose now, the belief was, well, first of all, you were invited to a town board meeting on the 19th.
Mhm.
I'm not believing that that's needed right now, unless you were going to give a different message to the town board, because this zoning revision committee, we're like the work group on this.
Mhm.
So what I was going to say is maybe, because I don't think that the town board has really read the document. I'm just saying. My prediction is they probably haven't read it yet. I think they're waiting for us to look at it. So maybe the right next step is, as you do what you do, maybe we ought to be having a meeting where you share your screen and you got everything in track changes. And then we just say, yep, that's what we expected, accept. Yep, that's what we expected, accept. And then you go, I mean, that's maybe another way to do it, because then when we send it to the town board, they just got a clean document. It won't have tracking changes, but it'll help us to see the track changes, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know if that got confusing.
Well, I mean, I could just prepare it with the track changes and send it to you, and you can look at them and see if that's what you wanted.
Well, and we can accept each one. We can maybe, you can send to us with the track changes and we'll accept them as just, so we can accept them. So, okay. Well, I guess we'll work that out, but you'll track changes and then we'll see what you did. And then we'll probably just do an accept of the changes. Well, I don't know whether it makes sense for us to have a meeting where we kind of accept changes together, or we'll just say what changes we don't. So yeah, you'll send to us with track changes and then we'll review it and we'll get you an answer.
Okay.
And then
Sounds good.
Weston, back to your question, the town board will need to review it. It's a pretty long document. They'll need to review it. And usually what happens, the board then says, okay, for a law, now it's time to send it to the Woodstock Planning Board, the County Planning Board. There's a seeker review done on it. And at some point there's a public hearing on it. And when all those things happen, then it will become law after that list of things happens. So how soon will the town board have it before they say it's ready to go to other places? I can't answer that for the town board. We'll send it to them, and that they probably want at least 2 weeks to review a 47-page document.
So probably 3 months before it's law.
Well, yeah. And our next ZRC meeting is 2 weeks from today. So if Andrew were able to get this, I know you said next week, Andrew, but if you got it done like a week from today,
Mhm.
then we'd have a whole week to look at it and then maybe close on in our meeting 2 weeks from today.
I can try.
Yeah, well, I know you got, and things come up personally, as you know, right? I mean, yeah, you're juggling a million things. I know you were juggling a million things, and you have personal things that came up. So, we'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna fuss with that table and get you a copy that has that table in it, and then I'll send it off.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Yes. Anything else before we close?
Thank you, Andrew.
So for the fun of it, do I have a motion from either Jude or David to adjourn the meeting?
Sure, why not?
Yay, David said yes. I think Jude will second that.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So there we go. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And I'll invite, well, everybody except for Andrew, I'll invite to the next ZRC meeting, because that's when we'll take what Andrew sends us and we'll look to do it. It'll be a work session again to clean it up. But this is very exciting because this is huge. This law is huge. So, I mean, it's huge, lots of pages, but it's huge in terms of its impact and helping the town do the right thing. So.
All right, thank you, Laura.
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you. And thank you, Ashley, for taking her evening when she might have wanted to play with 3 little boys, but here she is with us. So we're all good. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Did I leave?